Hi everyone, my name is Sonam, and I'm a resident doctor specializing in sports and exercise medicine. Today, I wanted to talk to you about the recent F1 crash in Bahrain and discuss how Romain Grosjean cheated death. Personally, I'm a huge lover of Formula One and make sure to catch the highlights every 2 weeks when they're released. Now, I remember watching the beginning of the Bahrain Grand Prix, absolutely astonished by that crash and simply the car splitting in half. What shocked me even more was the fact that Romain was able to jump out of the car by himself. Today, I wanted to go over the injuries that he sustained and discuss the safety aspects of the car, which saved his life. After witnessing that crash, I was so astounded how Grosjean was able to walk out and jump out of the cockpit himself that I did some digging. And what I learned was that Formula One race cars have recently been upping their safety standards over the last few years. Recently, in 2018, they introduced that halo aspect that you're going to see right up here, which essentially was the reason that his head was protected during the crash. If you look at the video footage again, he goes straight into the barrier, and that halo protected his head completely. The second thing that was an extremely important aspect of his equipment was the fireproof suit. We're going to talk a little bit about the injuries that he sustained right after this. But that fireproof suit was the reason why he wasn't burned in more places than just the back of his hands. So let's talk a little bit about the injuries that Grosjean walked away with. He essentially suffered from second-degree burns on the back of his hands, a sprained ankle, and a ruptured thumb ligament. As a whole, not that bad compared to how much worse things could have been. And in most cases, a crash like that would have been life-ending. The first, and arguably the most severe, were second-degree burns on the back of his hands. Now, if you see this picture up here, second-degree burns are burns that go through two layers of skin, which is the dermis and the epidermis. Now, second-degree burns can be divided up into mild second-degree and severe second-degree. Now, for the most part, it sounded like Romain had mild second-degree burns. And with mild second-degree burns, most patients get better without any functional damage. So there's no scarring, the skin is good, and they can get back to their baseline activities. Mild second-degree burns essentially get better in about 1 to 3 weeks, and all you need to treat them is ointments and dressings. If they are more severe, then things like skin graft and surgery may be needed. And there are a few complications that go with more severe burns. Now, you'll see Romain was dressed with dressings for quite a few weeks. These dressings have two main properties. So the first property that they have is that they provide an antibacterial environment. Burns have a very high risk of getting infected, so this is extremely important. The second property dressings have is that they maintain a moist environment, and that moist environment, I know you hate the word, but it's important, is very important for wound healing. Unfortunately, recent news reports do state that Romain may need a skin graft on one of his hands due to poor wound healing. I believe it's left, but don't quote me on that. And unfortunately, when you have more severe second-degree burns, they can heal with some functional damage. What does that mean? It means you can have very thick scars called hypertrophic scars, which are difficult to break down. The skin is a lot weaker than your baseline skin before the burn, and the area does not stretch as well. If you put a skin graft on the back of the hand, so essentially that means the skin is not growing and the skin is taken from another area, for example the back of the thigh, to put on top of the hand, that skin will never truly be as strong or as stretchy. And if you think about that back of the hand, it needs to stretch quite a lot to be able to grip and drive. So it is something that Romain will have to work diligently at in therapy to make sure he gets full use of his hand. The second injury that Romain had was a torn thumb ligament. Now, I, for the life of me, have dug and dug and dug, and I can't figure out which ligament he tore. But let's look at this picture right up here, and we'll talk a little bit more about the thumb ligaments as a whole and why it's so important to repair them right away. So this is the back of the hand. So if you were looking at your hand, back facing you, and you will see this is your thumb, and these are tendons that help you extend the thumb and point it out. So essentially you're thinking a thumbs up type of motion. Now, if you see, these tendons originate on the thumb, or insert on the thumb, but originate in the forearm. Now, when a tendon is ruptured and cut, it has the ability to retract itself. So think about if you cut essentially a rubber band. If you cut it down in the middle, the ends are going to retract away from each other. This is why repairing a tendon is so important, or repairing a tendon in a timely fashion is so important. If this tendon is cut right here, so that's the cut, within a few weeks, it will traverse up and the repair would become extremely difficult, if not impossible in some cases. And that is why Romain had to have his thumb tendon repaired in a timely fashion within days after the injury. The last injury that Romain sustained is a sprained ankle. Now, I'm not going to go through that in this video today because this is arguably one of the most common injuries a professional athlete will sustain. So it will definitely come up on another video and we can go through the nitty and gritty at that time. All in all, Romain Grosjean is a lucky man. It's sad to see how this is how his Formula One career ended, although I'm quite sure he's happy to just be walking around. If you enjoyed this content, please like this video. If you'd like to see additional content in the future looking at the anatomy, biomechanics, and the effects injuries have on athletes and their teams, please subscribe to my channel. For now, that's all.